This video is about how to read a poem. And yeah, that sounds boring to me too. So this video is about love and passion. It's about a person's absolutely falling for this girl named Lucy, and it's about what happens when Lucy dies. Okay, so I want you to pause the video at this point, like really pause it. And I want you to think about a relationship that you've had. And if it's a romantic relationship, that will fit well with the poem, but it doesn't need to be. It can be any relationship. And what I want you to think about, the question I want you to ask is, how unique is that relationship? Okay, so we're back. The poem that we're about to study, written by a poet by the name of William Wordsworth, who wrote at about the same time that William Blake was writing in England. They did not know each other, but they were writing at about the same time. This poem is called She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways, and it's about this question of how unique are our relationships. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to read the poem to you, because poems are meant to be heard out loud. She dwelt among the untrodden ways, beside the springs of Dove, a maid whom there were none to praise, and very few to love. A violet by a mossy stone, half hidden from the eye, fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. She lived unknown, and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. But she is in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. So I promised you a love poem, and this is. So we're going to unpack this a little bit. The first thing we need to do, though, is to ask, are there any words that we need to look up or to know? And I'm going to point to a couple of them here. Dwelt, untrodden, springs, and dove. I think everything else is fairly self-explanatory. Dwelt is just lived, and you should notice that it's past tense. This is something that happened a long time ago. Untrodden means not walked upon. Springs, this is not the seasons, this is the kinds of springs where water is bubbling up from the ground. And dove is the river dove in England. So this is your first principle. Know the words. The second principle is that poems happen in sentences. They do not happen in line endings. So it's very tempting to read to here and stop. She dwelt among the untrodden ways, beside the springs of Dove, a maid whom there were none to praise, and very few to love. Resist that temptation. Pay attention to the punctuation. So you've got a comma right here, you've got an exclamation point right here, and a period right here. And really, these first two stanzas are all one long sentence. The first stanza focuses us on where Lucy was. The second stanza makes some comparisons. So we know that she dwelt among the untrodden ways, so kind of off the beaten path, in this lake country where you have a river meandering through the countryside. We're told that there were not many people around. And then the two comparisons, the poet tells us she was like a violet that is hidden by a mossy stone, and that she's like a star when only one star is shining in the sky. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen the night sky when there was only one star, unless there was light coming from somewhere else that is blocking out our vision of all of the other stars. Then we get to the third stanza, and here the poet tells us something about who Lucy is and what has happened to her. We learn that she's died. She ceased to be. And this is an interesting tension that we see. Few could know when Lucy ceased to be. There are not a lot of people who are aware of her death. But oh, the difference to me. Her passing away means everything to this speaker. It's like his world ends. It's crushed. Now, here's where I want to come back to the question that I asked you about your relationships. How unique is the relationship between the speaker and Lucy? He certainly wants us to think that it's really special. It's like my world has ended. And certainly for him it is special. But if you think about the comparisons that he makes, we maybe want to call this into question. How unique is a violet? I'm going to try to draw you a flower here. There's your violet. Any one violet certainly is unique. It has its own genetic code. It may have its own particular coloring. But if you think about a full field of violets, or if you've seen daffodils or daisies, some other flower, they become indistinguishable from each other. They're just like each other. And the same is true of the stars, isn't it? If we've got all these stars up here, little pinpricks, and I'm apparently making my, whoa, what did we just do? That's actually kind of a cool effect. All these stars, they look kind of the same. They're all little points of light that come through. Okay, so I've got my screen back the way it's supposed to be. So this is the point of the poem, isn't it? That our relationships are very special to us, but in a lot of ways they look like all of the other relationships. Calling into question how unique they are. So your third principle here is to pay attention to the motion of the poem and the images. To think about how we go from who Lucy was to the comparison to what is the impact of her death. It's asking us to think about these things in some very specific ways. And finally, to pay very close attention to word choice. In this particular poem, the poet provides us with those clues that invite us into that questioning of how unique is this relationship. Painting a picture that makes us think it's really unique, but then when you pause to think about it, you kind of go, wait a minute, not quite so much. So, know your words, read the sentences, pay attention to the motion of the thought and the images that are used, and pay careful attention to word choice. There's certainly a lot more to reading poetry, but those are 4 tips that will really get you started well.